I stood by the fence post, thumb running over the crease of a letter I'd read too many times. The wind carried dust and dry silence, like it had for the last 3 years. That's how long it had been since I put in for a mail-order bride. Since I'd handed a stranger a folded paper with $30 and a hope I barely believed in. Her name was supposed to be Margaret Sullivan, schoolteacher, 22, said she liked books and didn't mind isolation. That was all I'd needed, too. Here back then, a soft-spoken woman with enough patience to handle the quiet out here. So when the stagecoach came into view, all slow wheels and sun-bleached canvas, I straightened my shirt, smoothed my hair back, and tried to remember how to smile like I used to. But the woman who stepped down wasn't Margaret. She had auburn hair tied in a loose knot, a dress more thread than fabric, and a face that looked like it had gone too many nights without sleep. Behind her came 5 children, all different ages, none smiling. The youngest clung to her skirt like it was life itself. The oldest, a boy maybe 15, stood at her side like he was guarding her from the world. His shoulders were squared, jaw tight, eyes already measuring me like he expected trouble. "Mr. Clayton Reeves?" the woman asked, lifting her chin, with a kind of dignity that didn't match the worn-out shoes on her feet. I opened my mouth but didn't speak, just stared at the group like they were ghosts. "I'm Lillian Harper," she said. "I believe there's been some confusion." Confusion? That was one word for it. I looked over her shoulder for anyone else. Another passenger, another. Wagon Hill, even a letter in the driver's hand. But there was nothing. Just her and the kids in a dry wind that suddenly made everything feel heavier. I finally stepped forward. "I ordered a bride," I said. It sounded worse out loud than in my head. Lillian didn't flinch. "And I came," she replied. "I know I'm not what you expected. But I didn't come here to trick you." The driver glanced between us, shifting on his feet like he was expecting a fight. "You want I should take her back to Abilene?" he asked, hand already drifting toward the reins. The children didn't speak. They just watched. Eyes wide, faces pale, clothes barely hanging on. One of them, a girl with freckles and a too-big coat, started to cough. I stared at them. At her. At the way she held her chin high even though she looked like she could fall over from the weight of her world. "No," I said, stepping back. "These folks are staying." The driver blinked. "You sure?" I said, "They're staying." He gave a slow nod, climbed back onto the bench, and cracked the whip. The wheels groaned, the dust rose. And then we were alone, just me, a woman I didn't know, and 5 kids who weren't mine. But something about the way she stood, the way she looked at me without flinching, made me feel like I'd just done something right for the first time in a long time. And maybe, just maybe, something was about to change. The house was quiet as I poured 2 cups of coffee, though the silence didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt like the kind that waits just before a storm. Lillian sat at the table, hands folded, eyes on the floor. The children were asleep in the loft above, or at least pretending to be. I set the mug down in front of her. She nodded her thanks but didn't drink. "Mind telling me what happened to Margaret Sullivan?" I asked, voice low but not cold. She reached into the folds of her dress and pulled out a torn, weather-stained letter. It looked like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. She slid it across the table without a word. I picked it up, heart already sinking. It was mine. The letter I'd written months ago. Same words, same ink, same awkward handwriting. But the name at the bottom was different. Instead of Margaret Sullivan, it said L. Harper. "Did you write over her name?" I asked quietly. "No," she said. "That's how it came to me." I turned the paper over and looked for signs of tampering. The way the pencil scrawled over the ink, it was deliberate, but careful, almost hesitant. I didn't know what to believe yet. "You ever meet Margaret?" I asked Dot. She nodded. "Once, at the mission house in Wichita. She was sick, real bad, but kind. And she gave you this?" I held up the letter. "She said you were kind, that you lived decent, and that you'd once made a promise." That stopped me cold. I studied her face, noticed the line above her brow, the scar near her temple, the faint tremble in her left hand as she wrapped it around the mug. Not fear. Not quite. Something deeper. Like she'd used up all her panic and was down to whatever came after. What? Promise? I asked. She didn't answer. Just reached into her satchel and pulled out another envelope, sealed in red wax. My name scribbled in a man's hand I hadn't seen in nearly 10 years. James Harper. I sat back hard. My chair scraped the floor and startled the sleeping dog near the hearth. You knew my husband, she said. I couldn't answer. Not yet. I broke the seal. The letter inside smelled like tobacco and sweat, like it had been kept close in a soldier's pocket for too long. I read the first line and my throat closed. If this finds you, it means I didn't make it back. I blinked hard, forced myself to keep reading. You once told me that if anything ever happened to me, you'd look after my family. I never thought I'd need to call on that. But now I do. Lillian and the kids. They have no one left. I'm trusting you, Clayton. I always trusted you. I folded the letter slowly, laid it on the table. You shouldn't be here, I said. She nodded, but her voice was steady. I had nowhere else to go. I stood, walked to the window. The moon was high and silver and cold. You're right, I said. I made that promise. Lillian didn't move. I turned back to her. But this ain't about promises anymore. It's about what's right. She looked up. I don't know if Margaret meant for you to come or if someone played with names, but you're here now. And you're not a mistake. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. We sat like that a long time, two strangers tied together by a man who died with honor and a vow I never thought I'd have to keep, but I would starting now. The letter stayed on the mantel for days before I dared touch it again. I didn't need to read it twice. James Harper's words had burned themselves into my memory the first time, but I kept it there, like a compass. A heavy reminder of who I used to be, of what I owed. Lillian didn't ask for anything. She swept floors, boiled water, scrubbed the children's clothes till her fingers cracked. She never asked how long they could stay. She never asked what I planned to do. The kids started calling me Mr. Reeves, except the littlest one, Anna, who couldn't quite say it, so it came out more like Mr. Wee. She followed me around the property like a baby chick, barefoot and curious, her thumb constantly in her mouth. It was her who handed me the second letter. I was fixing the fence when she waddled up, clutching a sealed envelope with dirt on the corner. Mama said this was for later, she said, holding it out like it was something precious. The seal wasn't wax this time, just a crude fold and my name in James's blocky scrawl again. I sat on a stump and read it right there. Clay, if she made it to you, then God's looking out for her better than I could. Lillian don't know everything, and I'm asking you not to tell her unless you have to. There's men who might still be looking. I never touched that bank money, never wanted it. But Lillian's name got caught in the mess when Sarah took off. I kept it from her. She thinks it was a mistake. Maybe it was. But I couldn't clear her name while I was breathing, and I sure as hell can't now. I stopped reading. The words were simple, but my blood went cold. I stared across the prairie, at the slant of the barn, the way the wind stirred dust in lazy spirals. Then I looked at the house. James hadn't just asked me to protect them. He dropped a live stick of dynamite in my lap. When I walked back in, Lillian was peeling potatoes by the stove. Her sleeves were rolled to the elbow, arms covered in old bruises and new burns. Do you know someone named Sarah? I asked. She froze, knife halfway through a potato. Sarah Blackwood, I added. Her shoulders dropped. Why? Because your husband did. She turned to me slowly, and for the first time since she arrived I saw fear. She's the reason we had to leave Wichita, she said. James said she was dangerous, but he never told me more. She used your name. Lillian's. Face went white. She robbed a bank, I continued. Used your name to cover her tracks. James tried to fix it. But now it's on you. Her hand trembled. The knife slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. The marshals, she whispered. Is that why they're really looking? I nodded. She stepped back until her spine hit the wall, and her voice cracked when she asked, What happens now? I didn't answer. Not yet, because I didn't know. All I knew was the line I'd written in my first letter to Margaret Sullivan. I ain't looking for romance. I'm looking for peace. Now peace felt further away than ever, but somehow I couldn't bring myself to regret it. Not yet. The dust cloud came just after breakfast. I was out front oiling the hinges on the gate when I saw it, 3 riders approaching from the south trail, fast and deliberate, not bandits, not lost travelers. These men moved like they had names that meant something. I stepped inside, grabbed my rifle off the rack, and gave Lillian a look that said more than words could. She gathered the children in silence, her face pale but her spine straight. By the time the horses stopped in front of the porch, I was already standing tall in the doorway. The one in front wore a black coat and a badge that glinted in the morning sun. A scar cut through his beard like a knife mark left half-healed. He tipped his hat but didn't smile. "Clayton Reeves?" he asked. I nodded. "Name's Marshall Marcus Whitley. We're tracking a fugitive. Woman, 5 kids. Came through Abilene 2 weeks back. Description fits what was seen arriving here." I didn't blink. "You got a name?" He pulled a folded wanted poster from his coat and handed it to me. There she was. Lillian Harper. Wanted for complicity in armed robbery, fugitive escape, and obstruction of justice. Reward, $500. My gut twisted. I kept my face neutral as I handed it back. "You seen her?" he asked, watching me like a man who'd heard every lie 100 times over. I looked back toward the house, then at the poster again, then at Whitley. "No," I said. "Can't say I have." His eyes narrowed. "Sure about that? You think I'd forget a woman with 5 young uns? His lip curled slightly. Not a smile, more like the ghost of doubt. "Mind if we have a look around?" "I do," I said. "This here's private property. You got a warrant?" He didn't. Just stared at me long enough to make the air thick. "You hiding something, Reeves?" he asked quietly. I leaned against a post. "Only thing I'm hiding is my patience." That earned a snort from one of the younger deputies. Whitley gave him a look that shut him up quick. "All right," the marshal finally said, turning his horse. "But we'll be back. And if we find out you're lying—" "You won't," I said, cutting him off. He paused, then flicked the reins. The horses turned, and within minutes the dust swallowed them again. When I walked back inside, Lillian was by the window, her arms wrapped around little Anna. The others sat frozen on the floor, not speaking, barely breathing. "You lied for me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I looked at her, really looked at her. "I didn't lie," I said. "I told the truth that matters." She didn't move. "I don't know what you did or didn't do yet," I added. "But I know one thing, you don't belong on a wanted poster." Her eyes welled up and she blinked fast, like she was trying to hold everything in. All the fear, the gratitude, the guilt. I took a breath. "We got maybe a day, maybe 2. If they come back with a warrant, we need a better story than silence." She nodded. And for the first time since she stepped off that wagon, I saw something in her expression. Besides weariness or fear, I saw resolve. Whatever this was, we were in it now. Together. The night pressed down like a held breath. Crickets chirped from the edge of the pasture, and the lantern between us hissed softly. We sat on the porch, just the 2 of us. The kids were asleep in the loft again, worn out from a day spent hauling water and stacking wood. I hadn't meant to work them hard, but they'd wanted to help, and I hadn't said no. Lillian sat wrapped in one of my old flannel blankets, her hair still damp from the wash basin. She hadn't spoken much since the marshals left, and I couldn't blame her. It felt like every word had weight now. "You said I don't belong on a wanted poster," she murmured, eyes fixed on the horizon. "But the truth is, I don't know. If the law agrees." I leaned forward, elbows on my knees. "Then tell me what they don't know." She was quiet a long time. The lantern flame danced in her green eyes as she finally began. "James met Sarah Blackwood in Dodge," she said. "They were both part of a small shipment guard stage to Denver. Couple of payroll sacks. Seemed routine. But she was watching the bank. She ran off with 2 men the night after. James came home sick about it. He'd warned the others something felt off. And your name got caught up in it?" "She used it when she got arrested and escaped," Lillian whispered. "Signed the ledger at the boarding house as Lillian Harper. Same day we left town." My jaw clenched. "She did that on purpose," she nodded, "to slow them down. 2. confuse the trail. She knew no one would believe a grieving widow with 5 kids was the real robber, but they'd sure suspect her if she stuck around. So she left, and we got the heat. And you never saw her again? She hesitated. Not since Wichita. She came one night. Said she needed a place to hide. James told her no. Said we had kids now, responsibilities. She left the next morning, furious. Next thing I know, there's a warrant with my name on it. I looked out into the night, my thoughts spiraling. I'm not a thief, she added quietly. And I'm not a liar. I turned toward her. Then let me read the rest of James's letter, she nodded. I went inside and fetched it. The fire crackled in the hearth behind us as I unfolded the page. I read it out loud so she could hear every word her husband left behind. Lillian doesn't know. I kept it from her because I thought I could fix it. If they come for her, tell them what she is not, what they say she did. Tell them she raised 5 kids alone when I was off bleeding into the dirt. Tell them she gave my son my name and never once asked for pity. She's better than I ever was. Protect her, Clay. Not for me. For her. When I finished, I set the letter on the step between us. She didn't say anything. Just sat there, one hand wrapped around her knees, the other holding the edge of the blanket tight under her chin. I believe you, I said. She looked at me. Really looked. I don't know how this ends, I continued, but I know what kind of man James was, and I trust he wouldn't ask me to protect someone unless she deserved it. The lantern flickered in the breeze. Lillian gave a tiny nod, the kind that says more than words. A thank you. A confession. A prayer, all rolled into one. We sat there. For a long time, 2 broken people bound by someone who saw something in both of us. And in that moment, trust settled between us. Quiet, stubborn, unspoken, but real. The next day broke with a stillness that made the hairs on my neck stand up. The kind of silence you only hear when something's about to go terribly wrong. I just finished hitching the mule when I heard it dash HOOFBEATS. Fast, angry. One rider. No badge. I stepped out with my rifle in hand, just as the dust parted to reveal a woman charging straight for the house. She wore black trousers, a leather duster, and a wide-brimmed hat pulled low. A pistol rode her hip. Her face was sunburned, her mouth set in a scowl that could cut granite. Lillian came to the door, the baby on her hip. The woman yanked her horse to a stop, dismounted in a single motion, and stormed up the porch steps. You thieving little coward. She spat, pointing a shaking finger at Lillian. Where's my cut? Lillian backed away, shielding Anna with her body. Sarah, you think you could run off with it? Leave me to swing? My heart dropped. So did Lillian's face. I don't have anything of yours, she said, her voice trembling but firm. Liar, Sarah snapped, pulling the gun from her belt. You took it when I left Wichita. You and that dead husband of yours thought you could freeze me out. Step back, I warned, raising my rifle. Sarah's eyes cut to me. And who the hell are you? The new husband? You planning to raise James's bastard kids like they're your own? I didn't answer. That's when it happened. The children spilled out of the barn. I told them to stay put, but the yelling must have drawn them. The oldest Tommy put himself in front of the others like he'd been doing it his whole life. Put the gun down, he said, voice shaking. Sarah laughed, wild and bitter. Isn't that sweet? Got your mama's spine, huh? Then the sound of hooves. Again 3 riders, this time. The marshals. They came over the hill fast, dust trailing behind them like THUNDERCLOUDS. Sarah turned toward the noise, panic flashing. In her eyes, I didn't wait. I lunged forward and knocked her hand aside just as she raised the pistol. The gun fired into the porch rail, splinters flying. I wrestled her down, the rifle clattering to the boards. She kicked, cursed, bit, but I didn't let go. Marshal Whitley leapt from his saddle, his men right behind him. By the time they reached us, I had Sarah pinned, her gun kicked away, and her breath ragged. Whitley grabbed her by the coat and yanked her to her feet. Sarah Blackwood, been looking for you. She snarled. She's the one you want. She took the money. No, Whitley said, flipping a second wanted poster from his coat pocket. We got witnesses now. They saw you ditch the bag, Lillian Harper's name was the cover, not the criminal. Sarah froze. Her bravado vanished. "You'll hang," one deputy muttered Dot as they cuffed her and dragged her toward the horses. Lillian stood rooted on the porch, still holding Anna. The marshals didn't even look at her. Dot, just like that. It was over. The storm broke. The truth won. Lillian was free. Tommy exhaled the breath he'd been holding and slumped against the doorframe. The younger kids huddled around him, silent and wide-eyed. Lillian met my eyes. "You believed me," she said softly. "I did," I said, brushing dust from my coat, "and I'd do it again." The marshals rode off with their prisoner, Sarah screaming into the wind, and peace, for the first time in a long time, finally felt possible. The days that followed felt like the first breath after a deep dive. Lillian moved through the house, like she'd always belonged. The kids found routines, laughter returned to the porch, and I started waking up before the sun with a reason that felt bigger than chores, but the question still hung between us, unspoken, unresolved. What now? We didn't talk about it until a week later. The marshals were gone. Sarah was behind bars. Life had steadied. But something still lingered between us like a shadow, just out of reach. It was just after supper. The sky was painted orange, the smell of fried potatoes still hanging in the air. I was fixing the broken hinge on the barn door when I heard her footsteps behind me. "You ever think about what you wanted?" she asked softly. I turned. She was standing in the grass barefoot, holding her shawl closed with one hand. Her hair was down for the first time, falling over her shoulders like something out of a dream I hadn't let myself have. "You mean before you showed up?" I asked, half smiling. She didn't laugh, just nodded. "Double quotes, yeah?" I said, setting the hammer down. I wanted quiet, stability, a woman who'd say grace before dinner and not question the cracks in the floorboards. She gave a small, sad smile, and instead, "You got me." I crossed to her, slow. "No," I said. "I got more." She looked up, eyes uncertain. "I'm not the bride you paid for, Clayton. I'm not young. I'm not proper. I come with 5 mouths and a past I didn't ask for. You think I don't know that?" I said, stepping closer. "I've got stretch marks and a temper," she added. "I've got scars. So do the kids." I took her hand. "Then maybe that's what makes it right." She tried to pull away. "Don't feel sorry for me." I didn't. "Let go." "I don't. I feel lucky." Her eyes welled up. "You don't have to say that." "I'm not saying it because I have to," I said. "I'm saying it because it's true." The kids were inside, the lamps glowing soft through the windows. A cow lowed in the distance. Somewhere a night bird called. "I don't want what I planned anymore," I said. "I want what's standing right in front of me." She pressed her lips together to keep from crying, then let out a shaky laugh and whispered, "You sure?" "As sure as I am that this door still creaks every time it swings," I said, pointing at the barn that got a real smile. I stepped closer and brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "You and those kids walked off that wagon and made this place whole." She leaned into my touch, eyes closed. "Then what do we do now?" she asked, voice soft as dusk. I didn't hesitate. "We build something. Together." She nodded, then let her forehead rest against my chest. I wrapped my arms around her, and for the first time since the war I felt like I'd finally come home. The church was small, just wood and nails and sun-bleached paint, but it held something sacred that day. We didn't send invitations, didn't need flowers or a cake or a choir. Just a preacher, 5 kids dressed in their Sunday best, and 2 people who'd walked through fire to stand beside each other. Lillian wore a dress borrowed from the pastor's wife. It didn't fit perfectly, but the smile on her face made it look like it was made for her. Her hair was pinned up with one of Anna's old ribbons, and when she walked down that aisle, Tommy on one side, little Anna clutching her skirt on the other, I forgot how to breathe. I'd never been the kind of man who cried, but my throat burned as he took my hand. The preacher didn't drag it out. He spoke like a man who knew love when he saw it and didn't need to dress it up. When he asked if I took her to be my wife, I said yes before he even finished the sentence. When he turned to her, she looked at me like she saw every scar on my soul and didn't mind a single one. "I do," she said, and it sounded like freedom. The kiss was soft, warm, real. Tommy grinned. The twins clapped. Even the preacher chuckled. We left the chapel into a sky full of prairie wind and new beginnings. Back at the ranch, things changed, but not in the ways you'd expect. The barn still creaked, the cows still kicked at milking time. But now there was music in the evenings, laughter by the hearth, and boots too small for my feet lined up by the door. Anna started calling me Papa without asking if it was okay. One of the twins tried to brand the chicken coop with his initials. And Lillian, she bloomed like spring after a long, cold drought. She filled the house with softness and iron all at once. She kept her sorrow private, but let me carry the heavy parts when it got too much. I never had to ask what I meant to her. She showed me in the way she looked at me across the dinner table, and how she reached for my hand when the storms rolled in. One night, I sat on the porch with James's letter in my lap, rereading the words that started it all. I'm trusting you, Clayton. I folded the page slowly and tucked it into my coat for the last time. You kept your promise, Lillian said, coming up behind me. No, I replied, standing to pull her close. I lived it. The sky stretched out in every direction, wide and open and waiting. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing peace anymore. I'd found it, right here, in the heart of everything I never asked for, but now couldn't imagine living without.